Give your sister your penthouse as a wedding gift. My father's voice boomed through the microphone before 150 guests at the Plaza Hotel. I froze, champagne glass trembling in my hand. Before I tell you what happens next, tell me, where are you listening from? Because I need to know I'm not alone in this. I'm Amelia Morrison, and I used to believe that silence was survival. That if I nodded at the right moments, smiled through the right conversations, and never let my voice crack, my family would finally see me as more than a checkbook with legs. But silence doesn't keep the peace. It just delays the explosion. My parents, Richard and Catherine Morrison, built their lives on appearances. My mother could arrange a charity gala like a military operation, every detail perfect, every smile rehearsed. My father lived for the spotlight, for that moment when everyone's eyes turned his direction. And my younger sister, Jessica? She was their masterpiece. The golden child who could do no wrong. Me? I was the footnote they couldn't quite erase. When people asked about my career, my mother would wave her hand dismissively. Amelia works in corporate something or other. She never mentioned that I was Senior Vice President of Global Expansion at Apex Venture Capital, that my signature had approved funding for companies worth billions. Success only mattered to her if it came with a wedding ring attached. Jessica didn't need achievements to shine. She was soft-spoken, radiant, perfect. She'd call me Big Sis in front of company like it was a pet name, something sweet to make her look humble. I played along for years because that's what good daughters do, right? I funded the life they wanted to show the world. When my father's real estate deal collapsed, I paid off the mortgage, $340,000 wired without hesitation. When my mother called about unexpected medical bills, I sent $75,000. When Jessica's wedding budget exploded, I transferred $60,000 to cover the difference. They never asked twice. They just expected it, like I owed them for the privilege of being born into their family. The week before the wedding, my father cornered me in his study. You'll sit in the family section, he said, not looking up from his scotch. Just remember, this is Jessica's weekend. Keep things low-key. Low-key. I laughed about that later, alone in my Mercedes on the drive home. He had no idea what low-key meant to someone who'd spent her entire life making herself smaller. The rehearsal dinner should have been my first warning. The Roosevelt Hotel's private dining room glowed with candlelight and white roses. Everything designed for Instagram perfection. My mother fussed over Jessica's hair while my father worked the room like a campaign event, shaking hands with business contacts instead of relatives. I stood near the bar, nursing a vodka tonic, practically invisible. Then Jessica turned to me, her smile sweet as poison. Amelia, thank you again for helping with the wedding costs, she announced, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. The word helping landed like a slap. My father nodded approvingly. That's how they preferred it, public gratitude that sounded generous, but made me feel 2 inches tall. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. One more night, one more performance. I'd smile, sit quietly, and disappear back to my real life in San Francisco. I didn't know they'd already written me into the wedding program, not as a guest, but as the sacrifice. The morning of the wedding arrived with that particular kind of New York sunshine that makes everything look innocent, almost holy. But underneath the crystal and champagne, I felt something wrong humming through the air like a frequency only I could hear. I arrived at the venue early, the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. White orchids everywhere, their perfume so heavy it made me dizzy. Staff moved like synchronized swimmers, adjusting tablecloths, polishing silverware. My mother's voice cut through it all like a blade. Make sure Jessica's bouquet faces left during photos. Her right side photographs better. It wasn't a suggestion. It never was. I was walking past the reception table when I noticed him. A man standing completely still in the chaos, watching. He wore a charcoal suit with a navy tie. His posture relaxed but deliberate. He didn't look like any guest I recognized. When our eyes met, something in my chest tightened. He gave a slight nod, then spoke quietly, just loud enough for me to hear, "Be careful what they announced today." His tone was so calm it almost sounded kind. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a chill that clung to my skin like fog. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined it. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "They'll take what's yours tonight. Don't lose it." My breath caught. I looked around, my father laughing with investors near the bar, my mother adjusting Jessica's train, guests arriving in waves of designer perfume and small talk. No one was paying attention to me. I stepped into the corridor, heart hammering against my ribs. My penthouse. The Upper West Side property that I'd bought with my own money. Every mortgage payment, every sleepless night, every negotiation that had left me exhausted but victorious. It couldn't be that, could it? Then I heard voices through a half-open door to a side room. My parents' voices. I shouldn't have stopped, but my feet refused to move. During the toast, my father said, his voice low and measured, "We'll make the announcement. It'll make Jessica's gift unforgettable." My mother's laugh was soft, conspiratorial. "And Amelia won't dare refuse. Too many cameras, too many witnesses. Pride can be useful." Jessica's voice came next, hesitant but pleased. "Are you sure she'll be okay with it?" My mother's reply dripped with false sweetness. "She doesn't need that space. She has her career. You deserve a home to start your marriage in." The blood drained from my face. They weren't just proud. They were planning it. Planning to take what I'd built and parade it as sisterly love in front of 150 people. I pressed my back against the wall, every muscle rigid. Inside that room, champagne glasses clinked. My family laughed. And I realized for the first time in my 32 years that I wasn't the daughter they loved. I was the resource they mined. I didn't storm in. Not yet. Because something had shifted in me. Something cold and clear. I wasn't going to react. I was going to respond. I went back to my suite, hands steady despite the rage burning through my chest. The hallway smelled like gardenias and expensive lies. Inside my room, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I'd prepared months ago, just in case. Documents, bank statements, property deeds, every piece of paper that proved the Upper West Side penthouse was mine, purchased with funds from my signing bonus at Apex Venture Capital 3 years ago. I forwarded everything to my attorney, Jennifer Walsh, with one line, "Be ready at 7 p.m. Plaza Hotel, ballroom level." No explanation. No emotion. Then I changed into a deep emerald dress, structured, elegant, unshakable. I wasn't going to blend into the background anymore. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My reflection looked calm, but underneath was something sharp and waiting. I fixed the diamond earrings I'd bought to celebrate closing a $50 million deal. Tonight, they'd serve a different purpose, a reminder of who I was before they tried to erase me. Downstairs, the ballroom was filling. Glasses clinked, strings played softly, voices hummed with anticipation. The ballroom glittered like a jewelry box, chandeliers dripping crystal, tables draped in ivory silk, centerpieces of white peonies and eucalyptus. Everything designed to look effortless, which meant it cost a fortune. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, heels clicking softly against marble. Fragments of conversation floated past. "Jessica looks stunning. Such a classy family. Is that Amelia? She looks tense." They had no idea. Jessica glided by in her gown, lace sleeves, pearl buttons down the back, a train that whispered against the floor. "I'm so glad you came," she said sweetly, touching my arm like we were equals, like we were sisters who actually loved each other. I almost smiled. Almost. Then my father's voice boomed through the speakers. "Everyone, please take your seats. Time for the toast." My stomach dropped. I moved toward a corner table with a clear view of the stage. Guests settled into their seats, conversations fading to expectant silence. My father adjusted the microphone, his silver cufflinks catching the light. My mother stood beside him, glowing with satisfaction. I lifted my glass, keeping my expression neutral. If they wanted a performance, they were about to get one, just not the version they'd rehearsed. The sound of crystal tapping crystal rang out. 3 sharp notes that cut through the room. My father cleared his throat, smiling wide. "Before dinner," he began, "I want to say a few words about family." The room fell silent. Folks paused midair. Jessica stood beside him, her gown cascading like a waterfall of silk. My mother touched her shoulder tenderly, that performative affection she'd perfected over decades. I stayed seated, watching. I already knew what was coming, but the human brain always clings to the smallest hope that maybe, just maybe, you misunderstood. My father's voice deepened, theatrical. A family's strength isn't measured by what we keep, but by what we share. My grip tightened on my champagne flute. And tonight, he continued, scanning the crowd with practiced emotion, we have something extraordinary to celebrate. My eldest daughter, Amelia, has decided to give her sister, he paused for effect, her Upper West Side penthouse as a wedding gift. The words detonated like a bomb. Applause erupted instantly. Gasps. Cheers. Someone shouted, "That's incredible!" Cameras flashed, phones lifted, capturing the moment that was supposed to make me look generous, obedient, harmless. My father had declared it into the microphone before 150 witnesses. And I froze, not from shock, from rage so pure it felt like ice in my veins. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. For 3 endless seconds, I sat perfectly still while the room celebrated my humiliation. The air thickened. Champagne turned sour in my mouth. Jessica pressed her hand to her chest, eyes wide with fake surprise. An Oscar-worthy performance. My mother's smile radiated triumph. Amelia, my father said warmly, gesturing toward me. Come up here, sweetheart. Say a few words. Every head turned. 150 pairs of eyes waiting for me to comply, to smile, to play along like I always had. Instead, I took a slow sip of champagne. The glass trembled only slightly in my hand. My father's grin faltered. Come on, honey, he coaxed, amplifying his cheer through the microphone. Don't be shy. The music had stopped. My heartbeat hadn't. And then, a chair scraped against marble. At the far end of the ballroom, a man stood up, the same man from that morning with the navy tie. His voice was calm, low, but it carried through every corner of that glittering hall. Touch her assets again, he said evenly, and you'll lose yours. The entire ballroom froze. Silence fell so completely I could hear my own breathing. My father's face drained of color. My mother blinked rapidly, unsure whether to be angry or afraid. Jessica clutched her bouquet, staring at the stranger. He began walking forward, each step echoing like a gavel strike. Every eye in the room followed him. Daniel Hastings, he said, pulling a sleek business card from his jacket. Founder and CEO of Hastings Capital Group. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People shifted in their seats. My father stumbled back half a step, recognition flashing across his face. Daniel continued, his voice steady and sharp as a blade. I believe you know my firm, Mr. Morrison. We've been working with your daughter for 4 years. The property you just attempted to claim in this announcement, he raised an eyebrow, is protected under anti-coercion clauses in her executive compensation package. It's legally untouchable. I could hear my mother's shallow breathing from across the room. She grabbed my father's arm, whispering something frantic. Daniel's expression remained neutral. What happened here tonight was a public attempt at asset seizure, and it's being live-streamed to over 15,000 viewers right now. Heads whipped toward a table near the back, where someone's cousin had a phone propped up on a tripod. The red recording light glowed like an accusation. My father tried to recover, his laugh forced and brittle. This is all a misunderstanding. A family joke, perhaps taken too seriously. Daniel's voice cut through him. A joke that involved coercion, public humiliation, and false claims of property transfer. He turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what exploitation looks like when it's dressed up as love. The room erupted. Whispers became murmurs, became voices raised in shock and anger. A man near the front, Thomas Barrett, my father's longtime business partner, stood abruptly, his face pale. Richard, he said sharply, I invested in Morrison Development because I believed in your integrity. After tonight, Barrett Construction is severing all ties, effective immediately. Then Victoria Knight from Hudson Logistics stood. Same here. We don't associate with manipulators. And finally, Gregory Palmer, my father's oldest associate, added quietly but firmly, neither do we. My father's hand gripped the microphone stand like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Jessica was crying now, soft, confused sobs that didn't quite reach her eyes. Daddy, make it stop, she whispered. But it was already too late. The house of cards had collapsed. I stood slowly, the noise around me fading to a low hum. Every eye turned to me. You wanted a spectacle, I said, my voice steady and clear. You got one. My mother turned toward me, her carefully constructed mask cracking. Amelia, please, she hissed. You're humiliating us. I took a step closer, heels sharp against the marble. No, Mother. You did that yourselves. Daniel extended the microphone toward my father. Perhaps Mr. Morrison would like to explain his behavior for the record. My father shook his head, trembling. You can't do this. I already did, I said. The crowd erupted again, gasps, murmurs of approval, phones raised and recording every second of my family's unraveling. My father's voice cracked through the chaos. Enough. This is a private family matter. I met his eyes. You made it public. The silence that followed was colder than any scream. Daniel placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, guiding me toward the exit. Behind us, my mother's sobs rose. My father shouted something I didn't care to hear. Jessica's perfect wedding day had become a live-streamed broadcast of consequences. As the ballroom doors closed behind me, I heard one final sound, a glass shattering on the floor. Outside, the night air hit my skin like freedom. I looked up at the Manhattan skyline, the lights of my Upper West Side penthouse glittering in the distance. For the first time in my life, those walls didn't feel like a cage. They felt like armor. Daniel stopped beside me. Are you all right? I exhaled slowly. I am now. He nodded. You handled that better than most would. I looked back at the glowing doors of the ballroom. No, I said softly. I just finally stopped apologizing. We stood there for a moment, two strangers bound by justice. Then he offered his card again. When you're ready, I'd like to discuss something bigger. I didn't ask what. I already knew. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs falling apart. By the next morning, the video had gone viral. 90 seconds of footage, my father's announcement, Jessica's fake surprise, Daniel's intervention, the chaos, circulated across every platform before sunrise. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. The algorithm loved a good takedown. Headlines called it the wedding scandal that broke Manhattan, and when family greed goes public. My inbox overflowed. Messages from strangers thanking me for standing up. From women who'd been told for years to keep the peace at their own expense. From daughters who recognized their own families in mine. One message read, I watched your video and finally left my parents' house. Thank you for showing me it's possible. I sat in my penthouse, looking out at the Hudson River, and cried for the first time in years. Meanwhile, the fallout for my parents was swift and brutal. Barrett Construction, Hudson Logistics, Palmer Associates, all withdrew their contracts within 48 hours. Morrison Development stock, already shaky, dropped by 60% in 3 days. Investors fled. Partners distanced themselves. My father released an apology video, sitting in his study, tie loosened, eyes hollow. But it was dismissed as damage control. The comments were savage. Too little, too late. You got caught, that's all. This is what happens when you treat your daughter like an ATM. My mother went on Facebook, claiming she'd been manipulated by circumstances, and didn't understand what was happening. She was drowned by thousands of comments calling her out for the lies everyone had seen in crystal clear HD. Jessica's perfect marriage unraveled before it began. Her fiancé's family, the Hawthorns, old money from Boston, backed out 2 days after the wedding, unwilling to attach their name to the scandal. The engagement ended quietly, but the tabloids weren't quiet at all. I stayed silent through it all. I didn't need to defend myself. The truth had already done that. When Daniel called a week later, his voice was warm. I wanted to check in, see how you're holding up. I'm good actually, I said, surprised by how true it was. Better than I've been in years. I'm glad to hear that. He paused. I also wanted to extend an offer. Hastings Capital is expanding our advisory board. We need people who understand integrity, people who won't bend under pressure. I'd like you to consider joining us. I stared out at the river, waves catching the afternoon light. Not for revenge, he added. For direction. Because what you did took courage, and that's exactly what we need. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes. Yes, I'll do it. His smile was audible. Welcome aboard, Amelia. 3 weeks after the wedding, my mother called. I stared at her name on my screen for 10 rings before answering. Amelia. Her voice was small, fragile, a tone I'd never heard from her before. We need to talk. About what? About fixing this. About family. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Now you want to talk about family? Silence. Your father and I, we made mistakes. But this, what you did, it's destroyed everything we built. No, Mum. What you did destroyed it. I just stopped pretending it was okay. Her voice hardened just slightly. You humiliated us in front of everyone. You cost your father his business. Jessica's engagement fell apart. Do you feel good about that? I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I feel free. Free. She scoffed. You're alone, Amelia. You've alienated your entire family. I was already alone, I said quietly. You just didn't notice because I was too busy paying your bills. Another silence, longer this time. We want to meet, she finally said. Your father, Jessica, and me. Somewhere neutral. Just to talk. Why? Because you're still our daughter. Because family is supposed to forgive. I closed my eyes. Part of me, the part that still remembered being a little girl who wanted nothing more than her parents' approval, wanted to say yes, wanted to believe they could change. But I wasn't that little girl anymore. I'll think about it, I said and hung up. 2 days later, I met them at a coffee shop in Greenwich Village. Neutral ground. Public. Witnesses everywhere. My father looked older, thinner. His suit was the same, but something in his posture had collapsed. My mother wore oversized sunglasses indoors. Jessica sat between them, picking at her nails. Amelia, my father began, his voice rough. Thank you for coming. I said nothing. We want to apologize. For what happened. For how we handled things. Handled things. I repeated slowly. You tried to steal my property in front of 150 people. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. My mother leaned forward. We thought you'd be happy to help your sister. That's what family does. Family doesn't ambush each other, I said. Family doesn't treat people like wallets. Jessica finally spoke, her voice small. I didn't know. I swear. I thought it was just a surprise gift. I looked at her. Really looked at her. For a moment, I saw something real in her eyes, shame maybe or regret. Did you ever ask yourself why I had to fund everything? I asked quietly. Why I was always the one paying. She looked away. Because you all took, I continued. And I gave over and over, because I thought that's what love looked like. My father cleared his throat. We made mistakes. But we're family. That has to mean something. I stood, gathering my bag. It does mean something. It means I finally understand what I deserve. And it's not this. Amelia. I'm done, I said. I'm done apologizing for taking up space. Done pretending your approval matters. Done being your ATM. I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. 6 months later, I'm standing in my Upper West Side penthouse. My penthouse, the one I earned, the one nobody can take, watching the sunset paint the Hudson River in shades of amber and rose. Hastings Capital's advisory board has been everything Daniel promised. Challenging, rewarding, meaningful. I've helped 3 startups secure funding. I've mentored young women navigating corporate spaces that don't want to make room for them. I've built something real. My phone buzzes. A text from Jennifer, my attorney. Final ruling came through. They can't contact you without written consent. You're officially free. I smile, setting the phone down. On the shelf beside me sits a framed photo, my grandmother, the one person in my family who ever really saw me. Beneath it, her handwritten note, "Don't let them dim your light, baby girl." I didn't. They tried, but they couldn't. The doorbell rings. I open it to find Daniel holding 2 coffees and a folder. Thought you might want to celebrate, he says, grinning. Celebrate what? Your freedom. Your promotion. And, he hands me the folder. This opportunity. I open it. Inside, a proposal for a new venture. Hastings Capital is launching a fund specifically for women entrepreneurs who've been overlooked, underestimated, shut out by traditional investors. and they want me to lead it. You don't have to answer now, Daniel says. Just think about it. Because the woman who stood up in that ballroom? She's exactly who we need. I look down at the proposal, then back at the sunset, then at my reflection in the window. For 32 years, I made myself small to fit into spaces that were never meant for me. But I'm done with that now. I'll do it, I say. Daniel's smile widens. I was hoping you'd say that. We toast with our coffee cups, standing in the home I fought to keep, overlooking the city that tried to break me. Later that night, I post something online for the first time since the wedding. Just a few words. If you've ever had to stand alone at a table full of people who called themselves family, know this, you're not alone. Your worth isn't measured by what they take from you. It's measured by what you refuse to give up. Stand your ground. The right people will find you there. The comments flood in. Thousands of them. Stories of courage, of boundaries set, of families left behind and new ones chosen. I read every single one. And I realize this isn't just my story anymore. It's ours. If you've ever been the one who gave everything while they took, share your story. Let's build something better together. Because the ending they wrote for me? It was actually just the beginning.